Yeah. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Welcome, everybody, to the Planning and Development Committee meeting. Let's call this meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. Is there any late items on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll recommend that the Planning and Development Committee meeting agenda for September 6th, 2023 be approved as circulated. And the mover, Ian, seconder, Deb, thank you. Approval of the minutes. Recommended that the minutes of the Planning and Development Committee meeting held on August 16th, 2023 be adopted. And mover, John. Second.
Thank you
very much. Development service update. This is Nicole or Sarah?
Me.
Okay, great. Thank you much.
Okay. Yeah, it's a bit small. Okay, so I took some time to wrap my head around some of the pending applications on this current applications list. Thanks. So except for the first one there at 102 Martin, I haven't looked into that one yet. I probably left the hardest one, the oldest one for last. So I don't have an update on that one, but I will work on that in the next couple of weeks. 534 Main Street. So we're waiting for a contaminated site report. I followed up with the province just to see where they might be at with that, and I never heard back, but I will give them a call to follow up again. And I think we know that there's a traffic impact study being conducted to determine access management into and out of the site. So that one is in the works. 1006 McPherson. I guess this one is also waiting for a contaminated site report. I did leave a message for the agent, but I know they have a couple other developments actively going right now in town, so they're probably a bit busy and this might be on the back burner, but I'll follow up again. Then we have 113 Wet Up. Sounds like that's also waiting for a contaminated site report. So same follow up with the province is required just to find out where that might be at. 100 Archibald Street. So we might have a couple different approvals required for the province for this one. So one is work on Crown land for the walkway, like the bed of the channel. And then another is probably works in and around water for the dock itself. So following up with the province on that one. They do have it on their radar, so just haven't gotten confirmation yet where that's at. And maybe I'll just skip ahead to 918 Riverside. That's the same. Might have two different approvals pending at the province. So 515 Dogwood, we talked about at our last meeting, it was going to come to the PDC and then roll through all the different channels. But the applicant had decided to pull their application. I did speak with the applicant and kind of understood what their concerns were. So my hope is to review the staff report and then connect with them again, because I think it is generally supported by the district that this could be a good subdivision, creating two smaller lots next to Dogwood. So hopefully we can bring that one back. Obviously I'll need to connect with the owner to confirm, but I think it is worth going through and just seeing. We don't know what the ALC will say until we submit it. Then I won't talk about 1303 Norden Court because Steffi's going to do that today for everyone. And then for 1436 Silver Sands Road, they want to do an addition on the side of their house. And the application was on hold by the applicant because they didn't want to do the riparian area assessment. But I just heard on Friday that they would like to move forward with it. They did ask that I confirm one more time with the province that they do have to do this study. So I committed to doing that. They've only applied for the development variance permit for the side setback for the room, but they will also need the water course development permit and a building permit. So those two applications haven't come in yet, but should.
Great.
Okay, that's it.
Great. Deb, do you have something?
Yeah, just on the 106 McLean McPherson. I know we weren't circulated on that original proposal or whatever, but I never thought they were talking about demoing the building. I thought they were doing some kind of an addition on it. It's
Yeah.
I have no idea.
yeah. I'm just kind of surprised when I saw demo existing building. I didn't think that was part of what they were planning, but.
Maybe Sarah could enlighten us a little bit. I think this did come to planning a while back and then they held off or something. So.
No, we found out about it through the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Okay.
There was, through the chair, there was some discussion at the PDC because it had been referred to the chamber. The issue with it was that they sent through site plans that didn't match the building plans they submitted. So they submitted generic building plans for A&W, which didn't match the building that was there. So when we checked with them to see, like, you know, what exactly are you doing? It sounded like they wanted to demolish the building, but of course, as you know, that was a gas station. So again, contaminated sites. So, yeah.
Okay, so it's demoed. Ooh.
Interesting. Well, that's interesting. Good. Anybody else have anything? Just one thing, I talked to Nicole about some of the channel developments or walkways and things like that, and if they're a development permit. We talked about, I know when we did a development permit on the channel, we had to give up our 3-meter walkway for the waterfront. And so I just thought, you know, that's something we should be looking at when the development permit comes forward on the channel. Is to try to do that so that we can continue that walkway on the channel. But other than that, it looks good. Okay, no more questions. We'll move on. Okie dokie, moving on to new business. 23-287 DP, number 3, 1303 Norden Court. Who's going to take this one away?
I'll take.
Stephanie, great, thank you.
Through the chair, so this is the application for 31303 Norden Court. So this is one of the lots that was created through subdivision in 1995, one of the 6 lots. So the applicant is proposing a storage facility on the property, which would be used to store boats, and it would be an extension of the existing business Papa's Marina on Riverside Avenue. This is the location map and ortho map of the subject property. So it is designated as Highway Commercial B, and it is within the Highway Commercial Development Permit area. And it also borders the agricultural land reserve as well. It is zoned as C2 Highway Commercial, and storage facility is a permitted use within that zone. So the applicant has requested to vary setbacks and fencing. So setbacks would be the rear setback from 6 meter to 0.3 meter, and interior setback from 6 meter to 2.74 meter. So on the rear side, adjacent to this property line, we do have a 10-meter unconstructed road dedication, which was created as part of the previous subdivision of 6 lots. So that currently acts as a buffer between this commercial property and the nearby agricultural and country residential properties. So the fencing regulation would be, the applicant bought this property with the fencing. So we were thinking to include that variance as well. It would be to vary the front yard set fencing from 1.2 to 2.4 meter, fencing everywhere else on the parcel from 2 meter to 2.4 meter, and to permit the use of barbed wire within a commercial zone. So those are the variances for this application. The next development permit is required. So the OCP outlines a bunch of guidelines on how the buildings are supposed to be, the building materials, massing, design, etc. So this is the isometric view of the proposed storage facility. It is a manufactured building from Integrity Buildings. Yeah, so the applicant explained that it follows modern motif design style with wide ridge roof and exterior walls in blue trim. That was his explanation. And there's parking and loading requirements, which is 8 parking spaces depending upon the size of the building and the use. So one requirement of this DP application would be to have a site plan that shows where are the parking stalls being proposed, the driving aisle, just measurement of that. That's just one outstanding thing. Yeah, right now there's an apple tree outside the property. Other than that, the applicant is not proposing any landscaping for the development. And we did send this out for referrals within the internal departments. Bylaw enforcement and operations did not have any objections as their interests were not affected. Building inspector had comments on the setback, variances on those two sides, east and north side. So non-combustible materials on the east and north sides of the building. And then based on the size of the building, an architect may be required to sign off. And that would be part of the building permit application. And I think the applicant did have conversation with the building inspector and they're moving forward with that. Fire department said no objections because of the 10-meter unconstructed road right away on the side. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and then we do have a recommendation.
okay, great. Well, I'll read that recommendation and then we can start some discussion. That the Planning and Development Committee recommend council authorize the issuance of development permit 23-287 DP to permit the development of a storage facility and development variance permit number 23-8287 DVP to vary the zoning bylaw 1000/2022 requirement for rear and interior side setbacks and fencing regulations for the property legally described lot 3, section 6, township 22, range 7 west of the 6th meridian, KDYD plan 2EP 67202, located at number 3, 1303 Norton Court. I have a mover. Ian, seconder, John, discussion. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, just a
Gideon?
question on the landscaping. So I thought we had some sort of provisions that you have to do a little bit of landscaping. Yeah, so, yeah.
That's completely up to like the committee. We didn't want to like enforce it onto the applicant, but then if the committee requires, we can ask the applicant to do. Zoning bylaw talks about landscaping and screening requirements, and it talks about 3 meter where the development abuts a highway or controlled access highway, and that would be like this part, this side of the property. They could have like a 3 meter landscaping on the inside. That is from the zoning bylaw. Yeah, and the OCP sort of like refers to zoning bylaw requirements, and that's the only landscaping requirement that kind of speaks to this property. Everything else is like 3 meter where the development abuts a residential zone, because I don't see this having a common property line or abutting residential zone, and because there's like 10 meter unconstructed road right away on the east side. So just the south side 3 meter, that would be.
That would have some landscaping on it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, my thing is like. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be expensive at all, but you know, something to.
Should have some.
Should have some. I mean, it's zero is.
An apple tree?
That's well, yeah, that's a little too far, zero. But I mean, I certainly don't want, I mean, landscape doesn't have to be elaborate or crazy. I mean, I've certainly done inexpensive landscaping, so I'd like to see it have something along those lines. And like I said, I don't want to cost the applicant much money, but you can do economical landscaping as well.
Yeah, for sure. Deb, what did you have?
Continuing with that line of thought. So I personally hate like the whole barbed wire top, but this is kind of out of the way and slightly industrial, but it's still pretty high profile. So, you know, like I can kind of live with that, but I agree with Ian. What I don't want to see is a bunch of dead cedars or, you know, because they obviously aren't going to be watering and stuff out there. So something that just adds some visual interest, and it doesn't necessarily have to be plantings even, or just a bit of xeriscaping, but something, it is a high profile location because you've got, you know, D Dutchman and that, you got tour buses going down that road. You've got so between the highway and McLean McPherson, you've got a fairly high profile location, just something. And honestly, they can come back to us with, you know, like, hey, how about this? You know, it's But, because I don't want a bunch of dead plants either, you know, that's no good, so.
Okay, thanks, Deb. John, do you have anything?
No, the only thing I really have is, varying the rear setback. They should definitely change their building plan because you can't have a 1 foot access to a rear door on a building for fire safety. That's, that building plan might not be the actual one they're submitting yet. That's my only comment.
And that they submitted, but then they talked to the building inspector and he did specify that he cannot have door here.
Yeah, okay, good. So, the only thing I would say, that doesn't make sense because you're not gonna get out if the fire's.
Yeah, I noticed that one as well. And then it's even the side door on the front of the building, on the front side of the building there. It's on the area where the snow comes down. So that's a big roof. And it's gonna probably be a metal roof and all that snow coming off there. If it put it on the front of the building, it would give it even a little bit more aesthetic, more appealing, and you wouldn't get that all that snow you
Yeah, exactly.
shovel every day when it snows. So that's for sure, yeah. Okay, I just one question too, Steffi, that we talk about it, if you look at the mapping, it's next to ALR land.
Yeah.
It actually, it has the road, it really doesn't border ALR land.
So.
What's the ruling on that? I thought I had to be right next to ALR land.
Yeah, so this is right next to ALR, and then when you look at the mapping, the ALR's yeah,
Goes down there too.
Yeah.
Oh. I thought that was a right of way. Okay,
and that's one of the reason why the fire chief and the building inspector did not have any much objection because of that 10-meter unconstructed road right away, and there's not gonna be any buildings or anything along here, so.
yep. Okay. No, that's good to know. Yeah, I was just concerned that if it's not up against ALR, do we have to make them do a whole bunch of stuff? But if that's ALR, that's ALR. Okay. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, just on the building itself, how many parking spots did you say again?
8.
Okay, and it's gonna be primarily used as
Just,
storage, like
Yeah.
vehicle storage.
yeah, I asked him if there's gonna be any clients coming in, but he
Right.
said not much clients, it's just going to be employees. And so the calculation was 8.3 or something, so we took 8 parking spots, instead of 9. So we calculated.
So basically the entire lot is the storage shed. There's no on-site parking either? I'm trying to get, is there employees on this site or is it just a storage kind of facility?
Storage is going to be inside the building.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any storage outside. If there's going to be any storage outside, then it has to be screened. Then additional landscaping requirements would come in,
Okay,
screening those storage areas and not having anything more than certain height and things like that. Because he said that there's not going to be any outdoor storage.
Yep.
Those things are not going to be triggered.
Do we believe them? Sorry.
I did make it a condition within the development permit saying that if there's going to be any outdoor storage, then we need, yeah.
I mean, I support it. I think wherever possible, like I said, it doesn't need to be expensive landscaping. It doesn't have to be over the top. I mean, I think we need to make an effort to make sure we have new developments look kind of nice. So that would be my only caveat, is a little bit of landscaping, certainly nothing that's gonna break the bank, but a little bit for sure. I support the development overall. I mean, right now it's just a vacant lot, so I always like to see some things up there rather than a vacant lot, that's for sure.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Sarah?
Through the chair. So on that note, I have a question. So through the zoning bylaw rewrite process, there was a lot of pushback from the zoning bylaw requirements for landscaping. So they were reduced, but they were also removed from a lot of zones. So in particular, like the C2 or the industrial, it's not a regulation anymore. It's just a guideline through a development permit process. So if the committee thinks that it's necessary to have something like that, as opposed to, so a guideline is softer than a regulation. I just want to put that on your radar.
Okay.
Because it doesn't currently apply to the zone, the landscape regulations in the zoning bylaw.
Okay, go ahead, Ian.
Could I just maybe explain my rationale? I think some of it is site specific. This is a site that is quite visible. A lot of traffic goes down there, certainly to Dutchman and just, you know, sled areas. I think zero landscaping is not good. We need to have a little bit, just to make, you know, the site nicer because it is a higher profile. Like, I think when it comes to landscaping, it is really comes down to site specific areas sometimes, right? And then the level of different landscaping you would expect on that site is obviously a very prominent site. And people are coming to us for a variance, which is in this case, I think it's totally acceptable. So I think that's what I'm saying. I would like to see a little bit of a landscaping aspect of this. Does not need to be expensive. I do not want this to cost the applicant a ton of money, but you can certainly do something to like even what Deb said, to just make the site a little prettier, because we are talking about, it's a storage shed, right? So these things are normally the nicest and prettiest things. So if we can pretty up the site a little bit, especially on an area that's heavily trafficked, I think we could do that, and I'm sure the applicant would agree as well. So.
Yeah. Okay. No, that sounds good, Ian. I tend to agree too. It's like, it is a high profile area, and Steffi, do we know, there's nothing on the applicant saying that they're gonna put any washrooms or anything in the building?
No,
It's just gonna be a shed, storage shed.
no water, no washroom, no recycling, like nothing.
But there is water to the property, so
There is water.
I mean, you put in lawn, you have to mow it, you gotta maintain it. But if you put in cedars, you just pop in some irrigation to them, you don't have to touch them. And, you know, whether, you know, space them out every 4 feet, 6 feet, or whatever, you know, it doesn't have to be a complete continuous line of cedars. Just make it a little bit greeny around there and takes away from a big massive building. So, yeah, go ahead, Deb.
Just on Sarah's comment about the guidelines rather than the regulations and kind of leveraging off Ian's comment a bit too, in terms of when applicants come with a development permit variance requested, how much leverage we have in terms of this site specific thing, because we kind of got into that with that Shuswap Avenue, and Scott thought that the shrubs they had provided screening, so therefore we didn't push for it when they asked for their variance. And now those shrubs look like hell, and I sit in the market and I get to look at that really ugly building every time I'm at the market. So, you know, in terms of, you know, like horse trading, it's like, you want this variance, we want this, you know, like, to me, I think that's it's fair to ask for those sorts of things. And even if it's just some, like I say, some big rocks to do some visual interest, or some putting the screening on the chain links, so that, you know, it's not, it is a high profile location. It's like.
Okay, good comments there. Deb, thank you. All right, I think you got an idea of what we're doing. We got a motion, we got a seconder. All right, John?
No.
Seconded. I was seconding that.
All those in favor? Carried.
And it was too quick.
Yeah. Carrie and Todd, all the best. That's great that they're still, you know, they're still moving ahead and developing properties in Sycamore, so that's.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, item B, 23-02-Z, 710 Con Street. Who's gonna take this one? Sarah, ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So one of the property owners is in the gallery today. If the committee has any questions that the chair would like to direct to them. So 710 Pond Street, it's just around the corner from the fire hall on Marstonson Avenue. We do have a couple recommendations today. Next slide. Another location image, just to help clarify that. So it is in an area designated as residential low density, and it is zoned R1. So the proposal Here is to do an amendment to the R1 zone for a site-specific regulation. That would be limited just to the eastern portion of the property, that's shown in hatch here. And that would be to reduce the minimum parcel size in the R1 zone from 450 square meters to 325. So I've suggested 325 just to kind of round it a little bit and create a little bit of wiggle room. By the applicant's math, it would be more like 327. However, we would need a BCLS to verify that. So 325, but I think we should go with. And this proposal would be to support a subdivision to create a new parcel. So the remainder would be 602 square meters about, which exceeds our minimum parcel size in the R1 zone. And this proposed smaller parcel size would enable them to retain a minimum setback along the side of the existing house of 1.5 meters. So here's some photos from the site visit. So you can kind of see how all the development is kind of pushed to the western side of the property there. So you can see the existing house. They've got an attached carport in the back. As you can see in the bottom image, there's some accessory buildings in the back there, kind of right there. They're all fairly close together. And then the image on the right, that's the eastern portion of the property. And I just kind of put a box on there so you can kind of envision where that parcel would be. Next slide. So discussion. So we do have an image here of what this layout would look like, and they did do some exploration in terms of, you know, proving out applicability of the R1 zone to a parcel of this size. So the key here is that it retains this 1.5 meter setback for the existing home. That's a big deal with building inspection and fire. It would allow for, you know, at a 40% parcel coverage, which wouldn't typically be all in one central area. You've got a total parcel coverage there, which is roof area, and you could stack this of about 1,400 square feet, which is a lot to my mind. And I did go and have a look at other communities with zones that allow for this very similar regulation, same kind of setbacks, parcel coverage, but this smaller parcel size. And there are homes on those lots. I went through, looked through MLS, 1,800 to 2,500 square feet. They're pretty big houses. So the minimum front setback would accommodate the required parking stall depth. Minimum parking requirements in the zone are 2 stalls. However, if someone included a secondary suite in there, they'd need another stall or so. I still think that that's going to fit. They might need a variance for driveway width potentially, or they might need to make use of a carport or a garage, but it's definitely viable in that regard. So in terms of referral responses, the ones in the staff report are from the subdivision, just so you're aware. And then I did follow up and double check with everyone. It just wasn't in time for the staff report. So building, no objections to this new proposal. Bylaw, no objections. Fire approval subject to conditions, which is that no variances to that 1.5. And engineering, no objections. So they did explore a number of parcel configurations, trying to avoid the need to come for a zoning amendment, just because it is a little bit of a longer process. And it just wasn't possible without triggering insane fire separation requirements. And honestly, probably not really feasible in terms of the back of the house. I imagine there's a lot of bedroom windows for fire access on the back. They were ending up with a lot line that basically followed the eave of the house. And I just don't see that being feasible in terms of climbing in and out of a window in a fire. Anyway, there is a recommendation here. Oh, sorry, here's a couple examples. I did pop these in for you guys, just so you can see what this starts to look like over time. Now, obviously, the parcel next door, there isn't a house right there, though maybe that neighbor decides they want to do it too.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of what you could start to see along there, where viable. It's not going to be viable on all lots. But yeah, and you can kind of see, like, this is a 2,500 square foot. I put the floor plans in.
Is that what it
there to
is?
give you An idea, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty ample, and you can go through the MLS listings and go on the
Mhm.
papers, like it's pretty spacious, so, yeah. Next slide, I believe, is a recommendation, if we'll return the chair.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Sarah. I'll read the recommendation. Planning and Development Committee make the following recommendations to council. Number one, that the District of Sycamore zoning amendment bylaw number 1049/2023 be given first and second reading this 13th day of September 2023. Number two, that the staff be directed to prepare a public hearing October 11th, 2023. May I have a mover? Ian, seconder? Deb? Okay, discussion. Go ahead there, Ian.
Well, I love it. I mean, I think this is exactly what we talked about at council. And so I think this is exactly what we should be doing for lots. This is getting pretty standard stuff in pretty much the entire lower mainland. I mean, it looks nice too, right? Like this won't impact the community at all, other than in a positive way, creating more housing. So yeah, I'm 100% positive for this development and others. I think hopefully we can use this to encourage other people to take similar sized lots and build housing on it, because that's the game we're in here, trying to get some more housing built, and I think this is a good way to do it. Okay, yeah.
Great, thanks, Ian. Anybody else? John?
I would agree with Ian, like a lot of our lots in town, we have like a lot of lots that are almost a quarter of an acre. Like our lot size in town is quite large comparison to a lot of communities, and definitely is a good way to get more housing, and we all know we need it.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor as well. I like the idea.
Great, thanks, John. Okay, no, I'll just quick comment. Yeah, I agree with both of you. It's exactly what we've been looking for, and yeah, great presentation, Sarah. Thank you very much, and thanks for putting that together. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Yeah, thank you. All right, moving right along. Item C, liquor license. Who has that one? Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so we got a referral from the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. There's two pieces to it. One is a referral around prescribed ID, and that doesn't really impact planning, but it was included in the referral. And even though we might have some, I'll skip that one. And the second one, you move slides, Steffi, is licensee retail stores and temporary relocation. So I've read through, I guess it's an engagement paper, and what they're considering is allowing temporary relocation of liquor stores, probably for renovations, I'm guessing, to a location that might not be allowed, like within 1 kilometer of another liquor store, or I don't know what else it would be,
School
further
or-
setbacks, yes, yeah. And then allowing them to come back into the newly renovated location. I guess right now there's no provisions to be able to do that. And so they have provided us with a list of considerations that we can respond to if we have any thoughts on that. So I've shared that in the agenda. And then it'll also be shared as correspondence at the regular council meeting next week. For anyone that wants to provide feedback on that.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, Nicole. Ian, do you have any comments?
I know this issue like the back of my hand, because I actually, I worked for the liquor association. So this is really like if a liquor store burns down, right? You have a 1 kilometer zone, like 2 liquor stores can't be within 1 kilometer of each other. So what happens is sometimes, something burns down or there's a problem with the building, and then you have to close down that business while you renovate. You can't just relocate it because you'd be within 1 kilometer or something else. So let's just say the government liquor store burned down here. It's obviously within 1 kilometer of Brothers Liquor Store, but that's grandfathered, that's already there. But they wouldn't be allowed to say move down the street and open up a temporary location under the current rules. So this is what they're trying to do, is trying to say, hey, temporary relocation due to something that's, not within an owner's control or the BC liquor store's control. So I think this is actually pretty good because, in town, like you said, we had a problem where our government liquor store closed down or brothers closed down. And then they couldn't reopen. It just seems really kind of punitive. So this is trying to take away, I think, something they didn't envision when they put in this 1 kilometer rule and make it a little bit more flexible. It'll still apply overall, like you can't have multiple groupings of liquor stores. There's still going to be separation. But yeah, I'm supportive of this. It kind of makes sense. I'd hate to see, like I said, if the government liquor store here burnt down or had a water incident, then they'd have to shut down for 6 months. And I think that's just that's pretty harsh. Especially if they could just move it and have a temporary location.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty sensible.
Okay, well, I figured you'd know a little bit about this. Deborah, John, you okay with that? Yeah, okay, thanks, Nicole, and we'll see it next week. All right, moving along, item D, Housing Committee update. Who's gonna take this one? Yeah,
Sure, I was gonna let.
I figured you would.
Yes. Thank you, Stephanie. Next slide. So this is a little update on the Housing Committee's progress on supporting homeowners to build secondary dwellings in their yards. It's one of the low-hanging fruit items identified in the housing strategy as something that we can start promoting to start using some of those big lots and support homeowners in using for a variety of reasons, right? They can support aging in place, they can provide housing for seasonal workers or young folks just starting out, or family members, kind of thing. In addition, they could also be used as bed and breakfast, potentially to support a homeowner as a mortgage helper in their home ownership. So the district issued a call for expressions of interest in April, and that closed on July 31st. We received 10 submissions, which is excellent. It's far more than we expected. So that's awesome. Of them, 6 met the criteria of the EOI. So the committee has met twice over August to discuss these and look at them, and they've shortlisted it in terms of bringing forward a recommendation to council to 3 potential proponents that they would recommend for consideration. So these are Adaptive Homes, Housing Projects, and McDermott Construction. There were some outstanding questions, so we did do some follow-up with them after committee, so there's some new information included here. The images on this slide are a few examples. The bottom 2 are not necessarily what the district would be purchasing. Those proponents are Housing Projects and McDermott Construction are proposing to actually work with the district and stakeholders to put together designs. But these are examples of work. When it comes to Adaptive Homes, they have specific designs that already exist that we would purchase and we would get the plans for. What's kind of cool about them that the Housing Committee is excited about is that they are also a manufacturer. So they provide plans so people could build something in their yard, but there would also be the option to get them in panel version to erect in their yard or bring in a completed unit and place it in their yard, which is exciting for the Housing Committee. Next slide. So here's how the committee kind of worked through the 10 proponents. They went through, well, staff supported them on this, obviously. Went through, pulled together a list of what was the scope of work and what was included in that scope of work in terms of value-added benefits. So we've got the list of them there. It's about 11 things. Some things that were important to the Housing Committee we're like, are they gonna look at our existing lots and kind of look at what kind of a footprint might fit on most properties? Do we need a couple of different footprints to kind of make that work? And they also really cared about whether or not site planning was something that would be made available after the fact to the end user, to help them make sure that their new little house was sited correctly on the property. And they are also, interested in options that came with the plans. So people had a few different ways they could do it. It could be a little bit more unique to themselves. So 3 of the proponents came out on top in terms of the services that were being offered, especially in terms of services that were being offered to the end user or the fact. So those were Housing, McDermott, and Motive. Motive was excluded because their costs were just outside of our budget. They wanted $12,000 per plan, and our housing budget is $10,000. Oops. It wasn't gonna work. So what they went with were Adaptive Housing and McDermott, and they wanted me to go back to Adaptive and see if they could come up with a better proposal, because their initial proposal was kind of way out of whack in terms of it wasn't really comparable to anybody else. So they almost disqualified themselves. But the fact that there was an option to get a manufactured unit, they really liked that. So we did go back to them, and this is what they came back with, was basically on par almost with McDermott, almost. So 3 plans that already exist. They happen to be step code 5 though. $6,000, a royalty per use of $500 to the end user. So that would be a fee that they would need to pay. And in terms of revisions, they said that's TBD because it would actually have to be done by someone else. And we did get a proponent who isn't on the list, who would probably be a good option to do revisions or prepare a set of plans that were to step code 3 instead of step code 5. That would be very affordable for the district to work with. So then Housing, as an architect, they actually have a really interesting architectural background. So they come in just under our budget for 3 designs. They also have a $500 royalty. But what's interesting is the first 3 uses of each plan are free to the end user. So 3 of each of those 3 plans. So there would be 9 units where they didn't have to pay a royalty, which is awesome in terms of supporting this initiative and getting pilot units built in the community. And then in terms of revisions, anything above and beyond what they've already accounted for. So Housing is actually pretty interesting in that they will do building code updates for free. So as the target with energy step moves forward and there are increasing standards, they will update those plans for us for free. That's part of the purchase. And they will also do minor modifications to those plans to ensure that those plans fit the site. So this to deal with site constraints, which is pretty fantastic. So I think those are pretty valuable, but then otherwise, $80 to $135 an hour to do any other kind of work. So if an end user wanted to use them to do their site plan, we could do that or use someone local. I mean, obviously not. And these sort of, these prices, they've been rounded up just for a little bit of privacy for these proponents, just so you're aware, this is not the exact price. And then McDermott, they were offering very similar, $6,000 would get us 3 plans, a royalty of $1,000. And then their rate for revisions after that. So these are them. So the committee is planning to meet again October 5th. They're wanting to narrow down these 3 to 1 in terms of providing a recommendation to council. But obviously, like, all 3 would come forward, so council could choose something different. And then information on the other 10 would also be included in there as well. But the committee would be recommending of these 3, this one, and then up to council. And there will be an update to the committee of the whole next week as well. Yes.
Okay, Great, thanks very much, Sarah. That's very informative. Yeah. Anybody have any questions for Sarah?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's a really helpful update. To me, these plans, whatever they're gonna do in terms of design, should come down to affordability of the actual unit that is going to be built, right? Because that's the whole thrust of this. You haven't quite got that far. Kind of, is that the lens the committee's looking at as well? So maybe I'll just let you fill that in a little bit.
Through the chair. Yeah, so the committee did, I'm just gonna stand up just because I've been sitting a little too long. So the committee did invite Brian Anderson from Baby Homes to come in as an expert kind of consultant to chat with them. And he shared a lot of information in that regard, because that's obviously a big concern of the committee as well. So the EOI criteria, we were looking for units that were fairly small to try to keep that cost down. And then, asking for, looking for proponents that were qualified to give us plans that could be adapted in terms of, could you add an extra bedroom or do an addition later, as people could afford to do that, to make it, a more attractive unit. That was one of the considerations, right? So in general, I mean, what Brian explained is that there's some fixed costs that, generally speaking, aren't going to change no matter how small or big a unit is. A kitchen is still going to cost a base amount, a heating system, an air system, right? Electrical system, they're all going to have a base amount. So regardless of whether or not a unit is 400 square feet or 600 square feet, which is generally kind of where our existing houses, most of them, they'll support a unit of that size. It's still bare bones minimum going to be around $150,000 to build that. Bare bones. And finishing, I mean, yeah, like there's a lot that's going to depend on the client in terms of finishing and how bare bones are going to go. But, things like maybe you don't have cabinets, maybe you have open shelves kind of things, right? So, and you're probably not going to, you might not have a washer and dryer initially if that's not something you can afford. Luckily, we have a new laundry facility coming in. There's already one up at the truck wash as well. But yeah, affordability is definitely a big component, and that is one of the things that whoever is hired, they will be tasked with. So it's like, it's going to be like $300 to $250 a square. But understanding this is bare bones minimum, right? It's not really gonna,
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Good. Deb, John, you guys are good?
Just 150,000 minimum. I'm just.
I actually thought it was gonna be closer to 200.
Yeah.
I'm kind of gobsmacked, but yeah.
One other question.
Yep.
So are all these designs designed to step code 5? Because I love step code. I'm a big fan of it. No, but are they all designed to step code 5?
Through the chair. No, so we asked for a minimum of step code 3. So the two that are actually going to be doing designs for us, that would be what we would be getting. The other, it's pre-existing plans that already exist, and they're step code 5 because they're out of Revelstoke. And that's the minimum that they need there. So, someone would have the option to build a step code of 5 if they wanted to, but I would see that, we hire someone else to draw them up at step code 3 initially.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, step code 5, no open flame, no like natural gas or propane in step code 5. Correct? I believe so. Yeah. Is that correct or? Okay,
Don't know.
yeah, well, eventually, I mean, just on the weekend or just earlier, I guess last week, the NIMO, and there's other cities that are already at a certain step code level where you can't allow natural gas as a form of heating. So the regulations are kind of weird. You're allowed a natural gas fireplace because it's not your primary heating, but you couldn't put a natural gas furnace in. So some of these types of provisions are part of the step code. So I just want to make sure that we're not designing to that, because to me, that's not practical, just stupid. But that's my opinion on that. Yeah, it would just pose a larger problem for our community if we were just down to only electric heat.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Thanks, Sarah. Right, moving right along. We'll carry on with item E. It's the KEEP, or what do you want to call it? Community Energy Emissions Plan, is that what you want to call it?
Yeah, I probably
You?
should have spelled that out. Yeah, the
Okay.
energy emissions plan. So I've just been learning about this plan. It's been initiated by the district. It sounds like we receive funding from the province. Get the name right here. From the Local Government Climate Action Program. And with this funding this round, this year, we've retained a company to help us put together a community energy emissions plan. And so over the summer, there were a couple of brainstorming sessions that I would say weren't well attended. And now the consultant has contacted me to find out what we want to do next. And I don't know how much this committee knows about this plan or where we want to go with this plan. I did ask the consultant, like, is this mandatory? Like, what are we doing here? We did pay for their expertise. And so they let me know a few things that are mandatory under various acts and charters that this plan could help us support complying with. I was kind of throwing around a few ideas of we could button up what we've already done over the summer, even though it wasn't exactly, what we probably would have wanted it to be, with full participation from council and staff and even stakeholders in Sicamous. And then have a smaller plan with some smaller goals that we could try and, I guess, achieve through an OCP revision or something like that. Or we can maybe revisit and do more sessions, more brainstorming sessions with full participation, and then have a more fulsome plan. Just really want to get a feel for if anyone has any thoughts or ideas on what we might want to do with this.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. I don't know a lot about it, and that's probably that's my, I just, I've kind of looked online and had a quick look, but what does it mean for Sicamous? I still haven't wrapped my head around that yet. Anybody else have any thoughts? Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, I think when did this start? When did we start this? Correct me if I'm wrong, didn't it kind of came as an information item? Council?
Kelly, do you know any?
Yeah, so this came out of, we briefly talked about it during our finance committee meetings.
Yeah.
So it was related to, that's really where we had the discussion about it, and I believe how much grant money did we receive? Did we receive any grant money for this?
It sounds like we did, yes.
Right, and I think we put a little placeholder in our budget saying, we're gonna take a look at this, but it was a very high level discussion.
Okay,
So
thanks, Kelly.
just my general thoughts on this. I mean, it starts with the community energy plan. I mean, community being the key word there. So if we're not getting buy-in or a consultative approach from the community, then these plans are not worth anything that they're even written on if people aren't buying into it. So, the key here is anything we do needs to be supported and bought into. And, depending on where the consultant is going or where the recommendations are going, obviously I don't know any of that. Then that could be where the problem is. So I think it probably needs a lot more discussion around it. I think it probably needs to have, just thinking off the top of my head, maybe some thought starters thrown out there and do a consultation. Like if there's a draft that we want to put out there for review and consultation, that's probably not a bad next step. But, just depending on where the consultations at, or sort of where the report's at. I certainly don't wanna throw a lot of money at it, but if there's a further amount of the grant money that we have to deploy, then.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I kind of think, I mean, I kind of look at North Fans, they're, you know, it's a big city, it's more of a big city thing. And, you know, it basically, you know, they gotta do a background on it and on why they develop a community energy and emissions plan. And then it talks about becoming an energy efficient community and action items. They got phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. They kind of break it all out for you. And I think, you know, if I haven't done my homework on it at all, but it would be good to know, you know, those items. That's my thought. Go ahead, Nicole.
It's interesting because we did have a peek at our strategic priorities for the district of Sicamous, and it was maybe a little bit of a stretch for it to fit under community safety, this plan. So under Councillor Rich and Councillor Beach's portfolios. Councillor Beach was involved in the first meeting and was very interested in the plan, but wasn't able to attend the second one. So, okay, it sounds like I could do some more exploring on what a draft could look like and maybe have this group have a peek at that and then see what those recommendations might be in the plan and if that fits within our strategic priorities.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
Sarah, you had something?
If it's okay with Nicole, I would just share a little bit from the first session. So I did attend the first session with Councillor Beach. And a lot of the questions that they were asking and engaging the stakeholders on, so Kelly Heselton was also there. So we did have some of the stakeholders turn up. A lot of them are things that we've already touched upon and done a lot of work on. So I suspect there's some really easy wins for the district in doing this, where it's like, you know what, these are things that are already identified as being important that can also cover off, you know, some of these other requirements, right? And, you know, things like our active transportation network plan and supporting people in the choice to choose to walk or ride a bike or whatever, that feeds into there. The issue with waste management that, you know, council's been talking about for a bit and at maybe doing some sort of compost program or something like that. That feeds into this. There's a bunch of little bits and bobs that already work. I mean, even the housing strategy and talking about infill and looking into ways to support that, it all feeds into this.
Okay. All right. No, thanks, sir. Okay, that'd be great if you wanted to, I think, do that. That would at least give us a little bit more info.
Mhm.
Anybody else have anything else on that? Nope. All right, thank you very much. Moving right along, item F, long-range planning projects, priority projects. Nicole, you.
Yeah, that's me again. Yeah, so not much of an update on this, but maybe just putting a plug in to think about what long-range planning projects we should be focusing on over the fall and into next year. I know I've seen a few different projects come and go, get to council, then get put on the back burner. So we're just hoping to get some direction on what this group thinks should be our priorities moving forward. And we can talk about some now if you have ideas right off the bat, but hopefully for our next meeting, this will be a topic and we can present some of the things that we have on our plate and maybe prioritize what we should be working on.
Okay. Great. I think we brought it up in the past just about the terms of reference for the Planning and Development Committee. I think we wanted to review that because I don't think John and I don't even know if Ian had seen the terms of reference. Yeah, for the newer group. So that would be one to start with for sure. And yeah, no, I mean, we, you know, thinking back when we started with the Planning and Development Committee, we just thought we would help staff. Maybe we didn't help staff get projects to the finish line quicker. Because I mean, a lot of the developers, you know, sometimes reach out to the planning committee and ask questions, and then we try to feed staff and with information and just speed things up is what we thought we're here for, and hopefully help council decide on the final end product, you know? So that's what I thought we were here for. Yeah, Ian?
Well, I mean, I have several thoughts here. I think one of our priority projects should be taking a look at bylaw 1000 and figuring out all the ins and outs of that and things that might have unintended consequences. I think there's been a few that has arisen over the last few months that we've seen that we might not have intended to do, but we should have a second look at. And then, you know, when it comes to priorities, I think it comes down to, for me anyways, how we can build in the most and approve projects in the most efficient way. You know, what is the process for that? You know, from, especially when it comes to housing, right? I mean, we've had this example today of infill housing. How can we make this the easiest interface or the easiest way to get this housing done, you know, and what sort of steps we could take to do that on, you know, on our end. So, you know, council's priority, I think everyone's been crystal clear that we want more housing in this community. And we need to find ways to make that as painless as possible. You know, when it comes right from the very beginning of where a homeowner goes, yeah, I would like to invest in our community. Great. You want to build housing? Let us make this as easy as possible. So for me, that's a priority project, is how we can streamline and have our approvals and have it really understandable that enables people to make these decisions on an investment side, so that we can get these projects done. And I think that's part of what we're doing, you know, with these plans and everything. And it's just maybe looking at it in a more holistic way. So that's just the two off my top of my head, but I do think we should look at the bylaw 1000. And that's going to be a pretty good ongoing project. And I think within bylaw 1000, we should be taking a look at what we allow in certain zones. You know, the list underneath it is extensive. I think it's too extensive, in my opinion, but that's a project in a bit for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Anybody else? I think one thing we talked about also is I'm not sure if I want to go through a full OCP review, but the OCP is pretty much outdated, and it's something that we talked about too.
Okay, if I
Sure, I'm an open door policy kind of.
just want to follow up, like, it's great that you bring that up. I was just having this conversation with a friend that I have that's in Alberta. He builds apartment buildings. We just had this conversation. He said, "That's on this side that my property when I develop it." It's like, it's a great feeling when you go to the local town, say, "Hey, I want to do this," and they're supportive. The biggest thing when you own property and you're taking a risk when you buy it. Maybe you own it, you sit on it for years, whatever, that's what we did in our case. If you go there, they're like, well, you might be able to do this, you might be, how about you spend 10 grand here and then come back and we'll take another look at it. So if there's a way of building confidence right from the top, you'll have a following through on it. That's the number one comment you have on this. Like, I went through and I just didn't get on. So I do like.
Thanks, Luke. Thank you.
And maybe if I could, sorry. No.
Go ahead there, Rob.
Difficult for me not to make a comment, as you know. I just encourage the planning committee to remember the services infrastructure. Because if you look at any type of growth, we often forget about sewer and water. Everybody's thinking planning and building and densification and stuff. And already there's some challenges there for any type of, you know, whether it be a hotel or apartment or whatever. So I just encourage you for priority projects, services.
Thank you. Very good point. Go ahead there, Sarah.
Through the chair, just in response to Mitch's comment, I just wanted to share that we will officially receive the grant funding from UBCM to do the complete community assessment, which is intended to model all our servicing, figure out our catchment areas, what they can support, and identify sort of priority areas for minimal investment, like biggest bang for bucks. Largely in regards.
Works, I know.
Yeah, but operations already has a project underway where they are doing the modeling more primarily around capital projects and the types of developments that Mr. Cooch is talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, does that give you enough to go on there, Nicole? Anybody else have anything else? Good. Go ahead, John.
A simple one with regards to what everyone's speaking on here is what we submitted for the people that are gonna do the Airbnbs and stuff in their house, like that checklist form. Honestly, it would be great if like you showed up and here's the form of exactly.
Yep.
the requirements, just like it says, you're not spending money in this thing to get a no, right? Like we submitted that with everyone's water, I believe it was, we gave out that checklist.
Oh, really?
I got one. I did receive that checklist for the
Oh, I'm sure you did.
For the Airbnb.
Airbnbs and just that public notification to, because then it would, if you would receive that and you were like, you were thinking about it, but you just were unsure, it just would give it that much more, confidence in people coming in, not being scared to come to the town hall thinking,
Build that secondary suite.
yeah, exactly. Just that quick checklist that showed up for the Airbnb thing was a great system. I liked that one.
Good point. Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
What?
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna make we've talked about it here and I think even SAS talks about it too, is like having our orientation that when you come in, we want to say yes. Like that's the goal of this place, is we want to say yes. We have rules, we have things that we have to follow, right? But our goal at the end of the day is to say yes. And I think if we start there and have that message out in the community that we're gonna get to yes, we're gonna have to do things, we have provincial regulations, federal regulations, we have all these things that we have to follow too. But having the person that comes in knowing that our goal is for a yes, and on pretty much every development, or especially when it comes to housing, I would say. That's our orientation. Is just I think it's just part of the attitude that we put out there. When we say we want housing, we want to say yes to every single housing project that comes, at least I do anyways before council. I have a very hard time thinking how I would even say no to a housing development. It'd have to be pretty darn bad because we're in a crisis. And so, yeah, I kind of like the direction that we're going is that if that's our goal, is to say yes for housing, then I think we're going to be on a really good path for all these priority projects going forward.
Mm-hmm. Great. Deb?
I brought it up before, not necessarily the committee, but Mike Mars and I started having this conversation a long time ago. And, one of the issues in town, and the checklist made me think of it, is it's just, we've got a lot of unsafe housing in town, a lot of unsafe housing. It had started with this whole unsightly premises, but then it got into, you've got unsightly premises and you've got, this is downright unsafe for habitation. And there's a lot of that in town. And I don't know, I know it kind of goes beyond sycamoos, but you talk about grant funding, whatever, but I would love to see something, whether it's partly a checklist in terms of what you can do to improve the safety of especially these old mobile homes. But also just, being a resource for people in terms of helping to fix that. I don't know. I haven't totally got my head around it, but, I was speaking to Kenny before he left and some other things about just how to improve, it gets into your emissions and stuff. It's like $1,000 a month for affordable housing, heating it because it's so drafty and old. And then they start using space heaters and then it burns down and it's just, I don't know. That's one that I would just like to throw out there is if we can think about what we could do about that, because there's just so much of it in town.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Go ahead, Sarah.
Through the chair, just a question, would that be something that could be considered as a priority project? It's not one that we've touched on yet, but it is a recommendation out of our housing needs assessment and our housing strategy to look at doing what's called a standards of maintenance bylaw. And that touches on the interior of the house. And it's not about spending money and making something look beautiful. It's just about making sure that it's safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It is.
Go ahead.
I mean, it is. One of my concerns is, and I agree with you, it's a concern. The other flip side of that concern is a lot of those properties are what is truly, truly affordable, right? And this has been the challenge when it comes to housing. And, the older stock is obviously going to be the most affordable stock. You build anything new, it's going to reset at a much higher price. And this is the great challenge of housing now. Our standard to building is much, much higher. Much higher standard, much higher cost per square footage, much higher rent, on and on and on. This is why I was always kind of concerned with step code. It's not because it's not a lofty goal, it's a good goal. But what are you willing to sacrifice for that? Are we going to put up with higher housing costs because we add in all these extra requirements into housing or zoning or planning and all this other stuff goes directly to the cost of housing? And I think this is part of the debate that is missing in the housing debate is we say we want housing, but then we load it up with regulations that slow down that housing. It's and so not saying that's what you can do, but I'm just particularly sensitive about adding anything more that would hurt any housing stock in town. I want people to live in safe housing. That's really important. But I'm concerned about, losing old housing stock. That really concerns me a lot. And it's not just a problem here, it's a problem lower mainland. I mean, you go to Vancouver, a lot of the Vancouver specials, they used to call them like the old boxes and their walkouts. That's the affordable thing, if there's such a thing as affordable now in Vancouver anymore. But that's where you found the housing that was attainable. They're probably not even attainable anymore, but and we certainly have a few of those around town. But no, I get what you're saying. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's another flip side to that coin.
No.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ian. Good, Deb.
And I agree with Ian totally. And that's why I'm talking about with some of them. I've actually had to deal with fixing a lot of these to make them basically safe and habitable, but not getting rid of them, just because, yeah, you're right. It's what's affordable, so.
Yeah. Good points. Yeah, one of the things I thought about too, and Brenda brought it to my attention was, we were out for a walk the other day and we were above Bayview and we have an acreage too, and we've been just kind of picking away at ours and trying to clean up the underbrush, but it's a big acreage. But we noticed that behind on the Crown land, they've already done their fire resilience, and they've gone and taken down trees and they've limbed them up a little ways and they've cleaned them up a bit, but there's still tons of dead growth there. And that's something that really worries me after you see what's happened in Scotch Creek is underbrush, just in the community itself. And somebody brought it to my attention the other day about the seniors, even the seniors block where all that land is, it's full of underbrush. If that ever catches on fire and gets big enough, it would probably take out that trailer park right next door to it, really quick. So You know, that, just like that. So that's, those things, maybe that's part of the checklist on the,
Mhm.
that could be part of it. Is your property fire safe? You know, do you have bulk mulch right up to it's a vinyl siding, as gardening and stuff like that, just, so those kind of things, especially with what happened in Scotch Creek area and that area, it was pretty, and what's happening in Kelowna, it's so scary. So maybe that's another project we look at is, work with the fire department and I don't know, just something to think about, a checklist on cleaning up your property. And I'm probably the worst offender because I still got a long ways to go, but I got to retire first before I start cleaning it up. Okay, go ahead, Ian.
No, I just want to jump off that because I think you touched on something really important on a planning side is, and I know Brett had grants to go and take out some of the fuel around this community. And maybe what we should be thinking about is on a planning level is what are some of these zones that we want as a buffer for the town, right? I mean, what we saw, and it's not just, it's Lytton, it's other things that this is an emerging threat to all towns. And we know basically if a town burns down, I mean, good luck rebuilding it. I mean, it's 2 years, nothing's been rebuilt in Lytton. CSRD is saying 5 years in Scotch Creek or some of the rebuilding process. I mean, you're getting to a point where towns can be wiped out and they probably don't come back. Or if they do come back, they're not even anywhere near what they used to be. And so when we talk about planning, we maybe need to start identifying where this town is very vulnerable to something like wildfire. We know we live in that area. 2021 was terrible. I mean, basically, it was luck that a whole part of this town didn't burn down. If the wind was blowing the right way, it would have come into the tree streets and it would have wiped out half this town, I think. That was a pretty scary situation. So maybe as a priority project, this is something we need to look at is, all of the, what protects this town overall from a huge wildfire run. And obviously you can't, there's no 100% mitigation, but what could we do on a planning level that could, increase our chances of defending this town in a situation like that? Because yeah, we've had one here. Now we've had 270 structures, Scotch Creek and areas that have burnt down. And that's scary stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know where that kind of fits in, but I would say planning has probably a component part of that for sure. But it should be something that as a town, we start thinking about because there's just too many terrible examples of this actually happening in the last few years.
Yeah, there's the areas that have big blocks, like even other ones, Marilyn Brown's property on Highway 97 there. It's about 4 acres, or it's right next to that other trailer
Maryland, yeah.
on the corner. Yeah, that's a big, it's full of underbrush too. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
Yeah, I was just gonna say on that point we haven't been very strategic in that program. It's been great that, like you phone and they'll come and take it away. And I took advantage of it this year, but in terms of being strategic and looking at areas where the real issues are, we haven't really done that as much, it seems, but.
Okay. All right, good. Anything else, Nicole? No, that's good. Well, good ideas, eh? Okay, well, let's move on to adjournment. I'll have a motion to adjourn this meeting. Yeah, seconder, Ian, all in favor? Thank you very much. Really appreciate. Thanks for your points. Good points. Good luck with that. That's a great idea.
Off the record with Rob here, I don't know, like if all of you guys saw my nice communities in bloom update, but Paradise